To my dear friend who lives in the world beside mine, I send this letter with a steady heart and a plain voice. I am writing late, while the lamps in my street give a soft glow that is measured only by comfort and not by any scale. You asked me once how a day feels here, and I promised to answer when I could be honest without fear. Tonight I can be honest, because the town is calm and my window is open to the quiet. I will not explain our rules to you as if you were a child, because you are not a child and you do not need a guide. I will simply tell you what happened, and what I felt, and what I decided not to say out loud. Earlier this week a courier brought a small bundle to the office where I work. The package was wrapped in brown cloth and sealed with wax that smelled like smoke and pine. My job is to examine dangerous objects before anyone else gets hurt. That is not a heroic job, only a careful one. Inside the cloth was a tiny book that looked kind and harmless. The cover showed a line of animals walking across a field under a mild sky. Their faces were cheerful and they carried baskets that suggested a picnic. The paper was smooth, the ink was dark, and the corners were worn as if small hands had turned them again and again. I did not want to open it, but I opened it. The first page carried a gentle rhyme about a rabbit and a carrot patch. The second page showed the rabbit and a friend comparing carrots by length and weight. On the third page I saw a little symbol in the margin, and my breath caught because I knew what it was. I will not copy it here, because that would be reckless and unkind to your ears. I will only say that it was a sign from your world, a sign that means a count and a place in a sequence. I closed the book and set it on the table as if it might hiss or sting. The room felt colder, though nothing had changed but the thought in my head. You know that in my world we keep our lives by story and relation. We compare by likeness and use, and not by abstract steps. We do not line up days like beads on a string. We braid them like hair, and we judge the braid by how it holds. Still the little sign sat in the book and waited, and it had a soft pull that made my fingers itch. I called for a colleague who sings resonance tests for stained glass. She listened to the book the way a baker listens to dough. She said the book would not crack our laws by itself, but it could teach a child a narrow way to see. The narrow way is not evil on its own, but it can make a heart stingy. A stingy heart becomes quick with sharp trade and slow with mercy. You may think I am being dramatic, but I am not a dramatic woman. I am a careful woman who keeps ledgers of stories and debts of kindness. In our markets we speak in fit and fairness and return. A loaf is not worth a coin here, because a coin would lead us into a coal forest of exact points. A loaf is worth an evening of comfort for the neighbour who has had a rough season. A loaf is worth a lesson from the miller on how to keep grain dry in a damp wind. A loaf is worth the promise that you will watch the baker's child when the wind and the oven clash. We make trade by rings of trust, and we keep trust by memory and witness. People from your world often ask how we build bridges if we do not mark spans and loads. I answer that we build by pattern, song and stubborn rehearsal. We do not check a string of measures, we listen for harmony. The beans hum when the shape is right and they sulk when it is wrong. The crew learns those moods like a family learns the moods of a child. We call it a chorus of timber and stone, and we trust it because it has kept us safe for generations. When a storm tests the new bridge, the town steps on together and feels how the deck moves under honest weight. If the step and the sway marry well, we know the builder has listened. If they fight, we stop and we mend and we only open when the quarrel is over. That may sound slow to you, but slow is not a flaw. Slow is how you learn what you cannot afford to forget. Medicine here also seems slow by the clock you keep, but we do not keep the clock. Healers taste tinctures the way a gardener tastes the first fruit of a season. They look at the shade of a tongue, the ease of a breath, and the rhythm of her sleep. They remember thousands of small cases by texture and scent and voice. They pair remedies to reactions the way a cook pairs broth to a fever. They do not use a precise dose, because the body is not a jar and the soul is not a scale. They test with tiny sips and gentle weights, like a short dance between two people who do not yet know each other well. When a remedy is wrong, the body says so in small signs, and a good healer hears them before harm grows. You may ask about fairness in courts without fixed penalties. We try to be fair by building a story that a whole room can hold. A judge gathers neighbours and asks witnesses to say what the harm felt like and how it spread. We do not rank harms by distant marks, we trace them by living ties. We also invite a person who is skilled in mending to speak about repair that people will accept. The sentence, then, is a promise of repair that fits the break and the hands available. When it works, it feels like a good seam on a favourite coat. When it fails, it feels like a patch that pulls at the skin. This sounds graceful when written out, and I know I make it sound gentle. It is not always gentle. People still lie, and tempers still flare, and grief still wants a clean edge where there is none. I must tell you about the book again, because the book will not leave me alone. It was not only a bundle of symbols, it was an act of care by someone who thought learning should be easy. The pictures were warm and the voice was kind. I found myself smiling at the clever fox who taught the rabbit how to share. Then the fox pointed to a little row of seats and gave them names that belonged to your side. The rabbit nodded and looked proud, and I felt a heat in my chest that was not pride. I felt a worry that had the shape a narrow path. A narrow path is good when you cross a cliff, but it is bad when you cross a meadow. I asked the courier where the book came from, but couriers are careful people. He said very little, and what he said sounded like a safe song. I brought the book home with permission, because we are allowed to study dangerous things if we take care. I set it on my kitchen table and I made tea that speaks in a light bitter tone. I thought about the people in your world, and the ease with which you keep time and score. I imagine a stadium full of cheers that rise and fall with each clear point. I pictured children racing across a field, each child trying to be the first to cross an agreed line. I know that you can count and still be kind. I know that you can chart a day and still laugh when a breeze changes your plan. I know that a string of symbols can save a life when a healer needs to share a method across a sea. I know that a beacon can flash its exact pulse and guide a ship through a dark channel. I do not deny the grace that lives in your tools. Yet I also know what those tools can do to a heart if they are the only tools in reach. They can make love into a score and peace into a target and a neighbour into a rank on a list. I do not want that for my street, and I do not want that for my child. You did not know I had a child, and perhaps I did not tell you because I like to keep one rooming my life private. My child loves to sort shells by shade and sheen. The child also loves to line the shells by a pleasure only a child can see, which is the curve that feels like laughter. The child does not ask how many shells lie on the mat. The child asks if the line feels like a good river. I would like to keep that question safe for a while longer. In the morning after the book arrived, I took it to the community hall where a circle of teachers meets. The hall has windows that open high and wide, and birds enter and leave as they please. The teachers read the book in silence and then place their hands on the cover. A teacher of weaving said the book could teach a habit that would pull other habits with it. She said a single habit can gather friends the way a bird gathers wool. A teacher of carpentry said the book might free us from costly trials because it offers a clean method. He spoke with love for his students and a plain wish to keep them safe on scaffolds. A teacher of stories asked whether a clean method is always the same thing as a safe world. She reminded us that a clean cut is also what a blade offers, and that a blade can both cure and harm. I listened and I tried not to sway to the loudest voice. I then read a page to the circle and I let the little signs sit on my tongue like flint. They sparked hope in some and fear in others. We are not children, and so we did not vote by show of hands, because that would invite a count into the room. We instead built a story together of what might follow if we kept the book and what might follow if we burned it. The story, if we kept it, was bright and quick. We saw children solving for our problems with ease, and we saw ships running lean and sure, and we saw doctors sharing cures across long distances. The story, if we burned it, was warm and slow. We saw neighbours who stayed tender in small exchanges, and we saw judges who kept listening past the first clean answer. We also saw the price of either story if pushed hard by pride or fear. If we kept it with pride, we might start to mock people who still speak in relations. If we burned it with fear, we might start to punish people for asking hard questions. We wanted neither of those futures. We ended the circle out a final stroke. We ask for a season of careful teaching by metaphor and song, and we ask for travel between towns that hold different customs. We've also asked me to hold the book and to keep notes in a plain ledger that is not sort by symbols. I agreed because I'm careful and because I felt the pull of the book like a tide. A tide is not a number, but it will move you if you do not brace. I brought the book back home and I placed it in a clay jar under my bed. That night I dreamed of a wide river with stepping stones that glowed. Each stone was a mark from your world, and each glow is a safe step for my child. Then the glow became a loud glare and the river banks cracked. I woke with my hands in fists and my mouth dry. In the morning I made a sweet and sour porridge that my child loves, because sweetness makes a heavy day feel lighter. I walked to the bridge that our town opened last spring by a dance and a prayer, and I stood there until my thoughts slowed. A group of elders were there to watch the water and to tell small stories that keep the planks bold. An elder asked me whether I was carrying a worry or a wish. I said I was carrying both, and that they were pulling at each other. The elder said that a worry and a wish can share a boat if you sit between them and row with steady strokes. I thanked the elder and I laughed, because the image was simple and true. Later that day a friend from the docks told me a rumour that felt like a bruise. He said that in the far quarter there is a room where people whisper symbols to each other for sport. He said they draw them with chalk and hide them under rugs. He said they are polite and never hurt anyone, but he has seen the way their eyes sharpen like a thin blade. I do not want my town to run on blades. I also do not want my town to fear chalk. The next day I visited a classroom where children learn maps that do not mark distance by fixed units. The children learn paths by taste and scent and the time it takes for a song to finish. They can tell you how far the orchard is by the way your shoes feel when you pass the bakery and the bell maker. They can say how far the sea is by how your breath changes when the wind tilts. I sat in the back and watched a lesson about rivers and hills. A child raised a hand and asked why some travellers get lost beyond the fields. The teacher said that beyond the fields the air does not give the same calm cues. The teacher said that beyond the fields you must carry other kinds of memory, or you must trust a guide. I wanted to stand and shout that I had a guide in a clay jar under my bed. I did not stand and I did not shout. I waited until the lesson ended and then I helped a small boy tie his boot. After that I walked the long street to the hall where I file dangerous things. I took the book out of the jar and I copied a page into a plain notebook. I did not copy the symbols. I described what they did to the rabbit and the fox. I wrote that the rabbit learned to sort carrots by a rule that was not about taste or hunger. I wrote that the fox smiled because sorting by that rule makes trade simple and fast. I wrote that the rabbit forgot to ask if friends were hungry now or later, and that felt like a small loss. I am not a poet, but I felt the small loss like a thread pulled from a sleeve. In the afternoon he visited me to talk about the book. She said that when a village fights a fever they need to pass a method across alleys. She said that clear signals that travel are a gift when fear is high. She also said that fear loves exact marks because they look like certainty even when they are only a guess. She told me a story from years ago when a ship sent a steady flash that meant help. The flash kept a pattern even when the wind changed, and rescue came in good time. I asked whether the pattern made people less kind once the crisis ended. She said that it did for a while, and then she laughed and added that kindness returned when winter did. We are animals that bend back toward each other when the cold grows. Her laughter softened my chest, and I brewed tea that tasted like cedar. She asked if she could see the book, and I said yes. She turned the pages with a wary care that made me proud of her hands. She did not speak the symbols, and she closed the book with a nod. She said the danger is real and the hope is real. She said the book should not be burned, but it should not be taught without a companion. The companion she imagines is a second book about ties you cannot count. The second book would show a market where people ask better questions than how much. It would show a court where repair is shaped by the harmed and the willing. It would show a school where a child learns the size of a friend by the time shared on a hard day. I liked her vision, and I told her so, and then I walked her to the door. That night I took the book back out and set it in front of me. I asked it a quiet question the way I would ask a stranger on a bench. I asked what it wanted with my child. I waited, and of course the book did not answer. I stared at the little marks until they blurred, and I thought about how your world keeps score. I know your games and your studies and your work can be fair because they are clear. I also know that clarity can make you cruel if you forget the person behind the mark. A friend of mine who repairs boats once told me a truth that guides my work. He said that a measure is like a knife in the kitchen. He said a knife can feed a family where a knife can start a war at dinner. He said you must teach the hand that holds it and the heart that guides the hand. I carried that truth to bed and slept better than before. Today I returned to the hall and wrote to you, because I owe you this thread from my life. You have been kind to read my earlier notes and to send me your gentle questions. I still will not teach the symbols here, and I will not write them in this letter. I will tell you something else that matters more than symbols. My town will hold a listening day at the end of the next warm spell. We will ask healers, builders, teachers, sealers, and judges to bring stories that show both the gift and the harm that clear marks can bring. We will not let those stories turn into a contest, because a contest will twist the day back into a score. We will let the stories rest beside each other like bowls on a shelf. People may pick up the bowl they need when they need it. The child in me wants to make a choice with a bright flourish, because that would feel brave. The adult in me wants to carry two truths at once and do my work with care. I think I will carry them both and keep rowing between them. I can already hear your next letter, because you always ask the tender question that others forget. You will ask me what I am most afraid of. I am most afraid of a future where a child here feels shame for loving the curve of shells more than the sharp points of a rule. You will also ask me what I most hope for. I hope for a future where a sailor can learn a distant signal without learning contempt. I hope for a future where a healer can share a remedy across valleys without making a neighbour feel small. I hope for a future where a church can quote a pattern without closing an ear to a new pain. I hope for a future where the baker keeps trading comfort for care even when a faster path is in reach. Those hopes are plain, but they keep my steps steady. I want to tell you one last story from a match we held at the Green. We do not keep score, but we do keep a mood. Two teams played a running game that depends on field sense and friendly cunning. The play was fierce but light, and both sides laughed when a pass fell short, and both sides cheered when a clean feint made a lovely opening. At the end we stood to a ring and breathed like one animal. a visitor from a far town asked who had won, and the ring replied with a single word that means we've all learned. The visitor smiled and said that this felt like a feast where you leave the cable full but not heavy. I want to leave this letter that way for you. I want you to feel full but not heavy. I will keep the book safe in the clay jar for now, and I will keep my notes honest. I will send you updates as the listening day approaches and passes. If we make a new companion book, I will tell you what it says and who writes it. If we decide to teach the first book, I will tell you how we teach it and who holds the chalk. If we decide to return a book to the person who sent it, I will send a blessing with it and mean that blessing. I will close now because the lamps outside are soft and my child has fallen asleep with a shell in each hand. The shells reflect the last glimmer of the street, and the sight calms me the way good bread calms a hard day. I miss your voice, and I miss the way you laugh when I use a phrase your side would never use. I am grateful for the path between us, even if it bends and sometimes hides. Write back when you can and tell me what your hands are building. Tell me how your heart stays kind when your tools are sharp. Tell me what you keep on your own shelf for days that ask for patience. I will sit by the window and read your words when they arrive, and I will answer with care. My friend in the world beside mine, thank you for hearing me without rushing me. Thank you for trusting a slow mind to hold a bright question. Thank you for loving a world that chooses relation over score and story over stripe. I send this letter to you with a clear face and a warm wish. With respect and fondness I remain your friend across the small gap between our streets. From your friend who lives in a world next to yours, I put my name here in silence and then rest my hand. Thank you for staying with this letter until the end. If my voice helped you think or feel, please like this video so more friends can find it. If you want to walk with me again, please subscribe and ring the bell so you do not miss the next visit. I would love to read your thoughts, so please leave a comment and tell me what stayed with you. If you wish to support this channel, please use the QR code at the lower right or the link in the description to make a donation. In the description you will also find links to very different series from this channel that you might enjoy. Thank you again for listening, take good care, and please come back for the next letter from your friends in the world beside yours.